Right, I no longer have this light to tell me whether or not I'm speaking into the microphone. You can all hear me? Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. My name is Emily Quarles-Mowrer, and I'd like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. Welcome to all of you who are joining us in our sanctuary on this rainy Father's Day. Welcome to all who are with us on Zoom, and welcome to those who are visiting our service online in the future. With all the choices we have to fill up our time, and believe me, I know we have lots of choices to fill up our time. I'm so glad that you guys all chose us. So this morning, our music is played by Kate and Callie. Thank you so much. And we'd like to send a shout out. Oh my gosh, I didn't write it down and now I'm having problems. Sorry. Okay. For over 50 years, the UUSC has been a liberal religious voice in the Pottstown area. As UUs, we believe everyone has a story that we can learn from, but listening to those who are different can teach us as much about ourselves as it does about them. And that the world is a big place with tons of questions to explore. The important thing is that we keep an open mind and we really listen to the people around us as we explore. We believe that your search for truth and meaning in the world belongs to just you, and no one can tell you how to do it better than you. And most importantly, we believe that our circle of justice and compassion is big enough for everybody. Everybody's inside. There's no one who we kick out. So we hope your spirit and your heart and your mind are refreshed by us this morning as we explore the way that love shapes our understanding of compassion. We come together this Sunday morning and every Sunday morning, not because of a creed, not because someone tells us we have to, but because we promised to support one another and we're showing up for one another. Our services are really different every week, but the loving kindness we feel in this building is always the same. So whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are, we are so glad to have us with you today. And thank you so much, Justine, for making it possible for everyone to see us today. Okay. So we're gonna light the chalice next, and I'm sorry, I'm sorry. The next thing we have is announcements. Tim's looking around, it's not a good idea. We have time for announcements. Does anyone have an announcement? Yay!
Hi, everybody. I'm Clifford, and I just wanted to remind everyone that this coming Saturday, I'm doing a cooking demo. That's a full fundraiser for the church. I'll be cooking different kinds of soufflés. And if anyone's not familiar with soufflés, I baked up a batch of little individual ones this morning that we can enjoy with coffee hour. This Saturday, I'll be demoing a cheese and scallion soufflé, a Grand Marnier orange, and a chocolate soufflé as well. Also, I'll do some wine pairings with each one.
I just want to tag team off that. I'm going to be sending out a notice today with the flyer or to sign up for there are a couple seats left, not seats actually, but standing space in the kitchen. And you can also talk to me today and be put on the list for the fundraiser on Saturday. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diana Evans. I'm the thesis of a Wiccan Covenant based here in Pottstown, Weavers of the Moonfire. This Saturday, after y'all get to eat lovely supplies with Cliff, at 4 o'clock, we are meeting here in the sanctuary to have a summer solstice celebration, which is a ritual of queer resilience to strengthen, protect, and heal the queer community here in town. And allies are welcome. Everybody is welcome. We're meeting in the sanctuary at 4 o'clock, and I hope y'all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sam. A couple things. Cooking demo is from 10 to 2 on Saturday, and recommended donation or asking donation is $25 per person. So it's a low cost. The other thing is we had our county health inspection Wednesday. We had no
violations, so we're good. So we can keep using the kitchen to do what we do. This was a different person. She was really thorough. She looked at the bathroom. She wanted to know where the septic tank was and the septic line, where the well was. There are a few little things that we have to take care of that we is technically me, I guess. Part of it is water testing, even though the Saratoga Water that installed the system, they did a test, a few weeks afterwards, but it's not from a certified lab, so if John shows up, I'll talk to him about breaking up the suburban water testing to add a couple more testing items to that, but everything was good. She was very pleased with everything, so we're doing good. Oh, and Cliff will be working on getting certified for food manager, taking over from Kay after all these years, so that's another thing that we have to have done. I volunteered Cliff for it. Thank you.
All right. So we'll light our chalice this morning. Do we have a volunteer who wants to light the chalice? Thank you, Chloe. We're lighting our chalice this morning with words by Summer Albiati. Lighting this chalice may feel difficult today. This symbol of justice, known to be a light of hope for the marginalized, a message of sanctuary for the oppressed, a flame that feels lost or diminished somehow. How do we rekindle this fire of compassion? How do we rekindle this fire of mercy? A famous verse within the Quran tells us that with hardship comes ease. With hardship comes ease. We welcome the ease, O God of justice. We welcome the ease, O Spirit of love. We welcome the ease and rekindle this flame from our tears, from our quiet suffering, from our collective prayers for those who cry for freedom. We welcome the ease and we rekindle the flame. On behalf of those who feel abandoned and betrayed, we welcome the ease and we rekindle the flame. For all of those who ask, why can we not live in love? May lighting this chalice today, no matter how difficult it may feel, help us to rekindle compassion and mercy within the deep crevices of our hearts, so that we can once again bring justice and hope to a world that is struggling to find humanity and struggling to find. So the reason I chose that particular one is a reflection of the no kings that went on across the country and some of the reactions that happened across the country, as well as the people in Minnesota who lost their lives. So that same technology that helps to make the far-flung corners of the world feel closer, that can also help to distract us from the people who are right here with us today. So this is the time when I remind you to put your phone in worship mode. I did mine before I got up here for once. So we'll put your phone is on silent. If you want to just take a nice deep breath. And close your eyes if you want. You can feel the way your feet connect with the floor. You can feel the way that your body connects with the chair. You can feel the way your breath fills the cells of your body and then comes back down. You're breathing in the same molecules that were breathed in by generations and generations around you. It's the same air that was in your father's lungs, the same air that was in your mother's lungs. It's the same air that's been around for millennia. And we get to share it. We get to share this stardust planet we call Earth. So we'll listen to the chime for one moment. Our opening words this morning are by Gretchen Haley. She writes, "Every little thing that breaks your heart is welcome here. We'll make a space for it. Give it its due time. Give it praise for the wanting it represents and longing for something more. Some healing hope that remains. Not yet. We promise no magic, no making it all better. But we offer this circle of trust, this human community that remembers so imperfectly, that sings and prays, although sometimes awkwardly. This gathering that loves, though not yet enough, because we're still practicing. We're all just practicing after all, still learning, still in need of help and partners, still becoming able to receive all this beauty and all these gifts that we each bring to one another. So come, let us worship together. So this morning, let us rise in body or spirit to sing hymn number 126 in the grade Singing the Living Tradition hymnal. It's Come Thou Font of Heavenly Blessing. Now, I have a story for everyone who'd like to listen, but if you're young in heart or if you're young in body and you'd like to come sit as a friend, please feel free. Good morning. Good morning. So this story is from Everyone of Butterfly. It's by Randy Hammer. And Randy Hammer doesn't really write stories, kind of more writes like talks, like things you can say to people. So, have you ever seen a butterfly? You have? Yeah, so butterflies are really neat, especially these monarch butterflies. Monarch butterflies, they start up in where we are, they eat milkweed, right where we are, that you may have some milkweed growing on your property, do you? Yeah. So you might even have wild monarchs living in your property, right? They fly all the way down to Mexico over the winter. Nobody tells them how to do it, they've never been there before, they wake up and they know how to get there. The longest distance that they are known to have traveled is from Ontario, Canada, down to central Mexico. It has bright reddish brown wings and white dots and a black border. But, it was not always the beautiful butterfly. When it's eating the milkweed, what does it look like? Caterpillar, that's right. It's like the very hungry caterpillar. Have you ever read that book? With the caterpillar that it starts as a little tiny egg on a leaf, and then it eats a leaf, and then it eats a hot dog, and then it eats a ham sandwich. So butterflies, they start out as caterpillars, and then they hibernate inside a cocoon until they finally become adults and they turn into colorful butterflies. And that kind of change is called metamorphosis. The big word that just means change. And it's not always beautiful, but it always has the potential to become beautiful. Do you know what potential is? Potential, it's got the ability, just like Spider-Man, you got Spider-Man there, right? Spider-Man wasn't always Spider-Man, who was Spider-Man first? And what's Spider-Man's real name? He takes off the mask. Peter Parker, that's right. Spider-Man started out as Peter Parker, but he went through a metamorphosis. And became Spider-Man. We all have the capability, no matter what we start out as, to change into something. We all have the capability of making a metamorphosis to become something even bigger and cooler. It's like Spider-Man, just like a butterfly. So that's what I have to say. Thank you so much. Time in our service where we pause for our morning offering. And I swear I had baskets. So Elena Westbrook has these words about the offering. She says, far too often we are forced to confront the terrible things that people can do to each other. Super happy. But when these things happen, one thing we can do is we can come together in places like this church to remind ourselves that there is still hope. There is still love. There are still good-hearted people who can look into the storm and continue to believe a calm, bright morning will come. This community is a refuge where we can keep the ember of hope alive when all the world seems intent on dousing it. And then we can use our little ember, our little chalice, to light a beacon for the rest of the world. Our offerings each week sustain this community so we can share our small embers to light the world. So please give so that we can all together help spread that light. And if this is your first visit, you're welcome to let the baskets pass you by because your presence in and of itself spreads the light. And you guys are already done because you're that fast. Thank you so much for the morning offering. It's given in a spirit of generosity and it's received with gratitude and love. So my reading this morning is in honor of Father's Day. It was written by a father. So It's not gonna sound quite as good coming from me, because I'm not a father and I don't have that perspective. His name is Nathan Ryan, and, it's out of Braver Wiser, which you all know is like my favorite, so, if you wanna look it up online, you can always go to Braver Wiser or the UUA, and there are just catalogs and catalogs of beautiful things that help remind you that the world is a beautiful place, even on days where it seems like harder to remember. So he starts with a quote: "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself." That's a quote from Carl Sagan. He says, "I still feel stifled trying to talk about my children. Everything I can think to say about them is how great, amazing, or wonderful they are. But then I stop myself because I know that literally every person ever born was born perfect and amazing. Also, I'm still not fully reconciled, nor do I think I ever will be, on the decision to have them. We made a decision to create these two people, knowing that living is painful. If everything goes the way they want to, they will love us and then they will bury us. And that's the best case scenario. And sadly, we know that many parents weren't given that option. What does it mean that while weighing this, we still decided to bring them into a world that can sometimes be violent or xenophobic or racist or anti-Semitic or hateful or polluted or dangerous and imperfect? I think we have a holy responsibility, a holy obligation to bring about paradise on this earth. And each generation helps us to do that. I've enlisted them without their consent in this work, just as every one of us was enlisted in this work without our own consent. I wanted to give them the gift of being alive. I wanted another person to experience the sheer joy and complications and beauty of this wonderful, imperfect earth with all of its people. So now the challenge. Can you make the world that should have been when my children were born? For some reason, that's an easier challenge to articulate than the real one. Make the world that you and I should have had before we were born. You are born of the most divine particles. Make the world better because you exist. Go find the person you disagree with the most or who bothers you the most and go love the heck out of them. Go have a conversation, go bake a loaf of bread, love them as you love yourself. And if you don't love yourself, well, go ahead and love yourself. If these past few years haven't shown us that this is our great calling, I can't imagine what would. And he ends with a prayer. He says, God and that uniting spirit within us all, please help us know we are not alone. Help us know that sometimes the weeks are hard and heartbreaking. Please help us know that we are worthy of love and justice. Make us into beacons of hope and justice. Help us to build the world we were promised before we were born. Amen. And now it's time for the choral anthem. I bullied the choir into doing something. But they love it, right? So do you hear what I hear? That sounds like the title of a Christmas one instead of Middle of Summer. But actually, the reason it came to me is because I've been going through a bunch of my books that have been on my to be read shelf for over, I don't know how many years. This one was recommended by our last set of full-time ministers. But it's a great book. Karen Armstrong is amazing. She's written a bunch of different things, and if you have a chance to read anything she's written, she's great. So anyhow, I was reading this and I was reading through, and one of her chapters was, how should we speak to one another? And it really got me thinking, like, how do we normally speak to one another? Like, am I really listening to people? Well, Shankar Vedantam is the executive editor of Hidden Brain, which is a science podcast that's carried by our local NPR affiliate, WHYY. And it's about common mental activities, mental shortcuts, components of memory, the way attention works, that shape our daily lives in ways that we're not necessarily aware of. So that's why he calls it the hidden brain. It's the brain that we don't really think about. And this week, the Hidden Brain newsletter mentions a study by Jesse Sun, Wen Wu, and Jeffrey Godwin that showed that people who are seen as others as having a strong moral code, people who are honest, people who are kind, people who are fair and dependable. And this is not self-reported, which was interesting. This is people who they recruited people around them to say how moral they thought they were. But the self-report was how happy they are. So they would self-report that they're very happy. And it's the people who were described as the most moral, who were self-reporting the most happiness. The blurb in the newsletter says, the link between moral character and happiness held strong even after controlling for things like likability, religion, age, gender. So even somebody who you don't like very much, who's got a strong moral code, if you identify them as having a strong moral code, it is very likely that they will say that they are happy. People who are judged as moral seem to enjoy better relationships, a deeper sense of integrity. These are all factors that are tied to well-being. So I was thinking, how does that tie into how we speak to each other? Karen Armstrong was talking about Socratic dialogue. She said the way that we talk to each other, like the way we talk to each other in most of our culture is through debate. Like you have your opinion, I have my opinion, and then we talk about it and one of the opinions wins. And I know we talk a lot about how do we change people's minds, how we win hearts and minds, and all of that is still debate. Like even if we're thinking, I'm going to talk to somebody, I'm going to really listen, and then they're going to agree with me. Like even though I'm really listening and they're doing the talking, somehow my listening to them is going to change their mind because we are all still thinking in that debate mentality. But what she was talking about was Socratic dialogue as explained by Plato. Socratic dialogue is not about debate. It's an exercise in the discovery of one's own ignorance, as she says. Debate is a competition with a win, lose, or draw outcome. But the purpose of dialogue, Plato argued, is more of a communal meditation where each participant is urged to make a place for one another in their mind. And before you think that, oh, that's only one guy who thought this way, that also two other great people in non-Western thinking, Buddha and Confucius, both seem to have come to the same conclusion about discussion, about communication. So Armstrong describes Confucius as saying, we develop our insights through friendly interaction, which help our thoughts to achieve maturity. He's quoted as saying, his sole talent in life was an unwearying effort to learn and an unflagging patience in teaching others. So he kept an open mind in every conversation, and that was his big talent, keeping an open mind and learning and teaching and communicating back and forth with others. We think to ourselves, well, okay, but if we're teaching, that means they're going to agree with us because we're imparting our wisdom. But that's not how he was thinking. He was thinking as much about what other people are learning from me as what I am learning from them. Now, when Armstrong discussed Buddha, she said one of the stories that's told of Buddha is that his disciple, King Pasenadi, which I may have just mispronounced, came to him confessing that nothing was more important to him than his own self. Now, if you know a lot about Buddhist thought, there's a discourse about like the unskillful nature of egoism, and there's various words around it that I don't pronounce very well, so I'm going to skip. But it's all about you're trying to stay outside of yourself, and yourself is not the most important, and recognizing that yourself is not the most important. But when Buddha was talking to this person, to this king, instead of starting in on, well, here's why you're wrong, he started where the king Pasenadi was in his own journey. He said to have replied to this statement, a person who loves the self should not harm the self of others. A person who loves the self should not harm the self of others. So instead of saying, oh, you shouldn't be thinking so much about yourself, and you should not take yourself so seriously, he said, that's great. I'm great. You notice that it's very important to you. Yourself is so important to you. Now think about this. Everyone's self is very important to them. And if you can think of what might have happened in that conversation, instead of having that conversation go, you're wrong, that conversation went, yes, and. You guys ever done an improv class? Yeah, obviously lots of nodding heads. So when you're doing an improv class, you are supposed to always buy into the last person's statement. So instead of you might have a great idea and somebody got in before you and they're like, and you are the king of Siam. And they're like, and you want to say, no, I'm the queen of Sheba. But instead you say, yes, and. You say, yes, and I am wearing a tiara. Because that's what you wanted to do as the queen of Sheba. But you can always say yes, and you can always add on. And having that kind of thought in your head when you're conversing with somebody, that opens up instead of closing down. So all three of these thinkers, all three of these sages, Plato and Buddha and Confucius, displayed what is now called intellectual humility. Now, I know we've talked about intellectual humility before. It's an awareness of one's own fallibility. Now, we might not have all the answers. I know it's shocking. Someone else might have a piece of truth that we're missing. And in order to speak to one another, we have to find a context in which words make sense. So if you're having a dialogue with someone and they say something that doesn't make sense to you, your brain automatically tries to figure out where they could be coming from. So in linguistics, that's called the principle of charity. Have you ever had that happen where you're talking to, this happens to me all the time, I'm talking to my kids, and they say something like, blah, 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 skibbity toilet. And I'm like, what? Struggling to make that make sense in my head. But the principle of charity, what the principle of charity says is, it must make sense because they just said it. And communication language is actually all language is communication, all behavior is communication. But language is about believing the person you're talking to makes sense, because otherwise, why would you be communicating? They must be trying to communicate something. They must be trying to get something across. And so even though I do not understand what Tom Shahor means. It must mean something to someone. And that is apparently something that is very common on the internet right now. Couldn't tell you what it means, but I get like memes of that. So Anderson describes the principle of charity as assuming that the speaker shares the same human nature as yourself, and that even if your belief systems differ, you both have the same idea of what constitutes truth. I know that we've all come across people whose belief systems differ from us in various ways. I mean, they could be very different, they could be almost the same. So I wanted to tell you a story that is kind of relevant about like what's going on in the world today, considering the current head of the US Department of Health and Human Services. Oh, yeah. So a few years ago, I was speaking about free will. And the quote that was my inspiration, it's actually a quote that I found on the internet that I wrote down and like put on a Post-it. And I thought, oh, I must not have like written down the person who it was by. So I went and searched for it today and I couldn't find who it's by. But the quote is, it's okay for you to believe what you believe. It's not okay for you to insist that everyone else believe what you believe. And I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. So in my service, I had been searching for some counterfactuals, like some realm of life where maybe we could all agree that we should believe the same thing. Like, is there a place? And what I came up with was like, oh, well, there's this vaccination program in Pakistan that had been disrupted by a partisan political process. So in 2011, we were searching really hard for Osama bin Laden, and part of the search was carried out by operatives entering households in Pakistan, pretending to be a vaccination program for hepatitis B. Vaccine hesitancy has always been an issue in Pakistan, it still is. Right now, the national vaccination rate in Pakistan hovers just around 60%. And almost half of all the deaths in that country are due to vaccine preventable causes. So I was kind of horrified by that program, and I thought to myself, can't we all agree that vaccination is a positive and we should be preventing people from dying, and also that we should not be using a program that's meant to save lives for political purposes. And I got a lot of buy-in for that. I argued that vaccines for children who would otherwise die might be a belief we could all believe. But after the service, a member of the congregation came to me with a concern. And they said that they had a child who was allergic to some of the components that were used in childhood vaccines at the time that their child was in line to get vaccinated. And they chose not to vaccinate. And they wanted me to know that vaccination is not a one-size-fits-all solution. And I thought, yeah, you know what? It's okay for me to believe what I believe, but it's not okay for me to tell you what you believe. I couldn't find a counterfactual. So I went to another work training. I know I tell you guys about my work trainings all the time. I went to another work training recently, and this one was about giving feedback. And it was saying like, so there was a part of it that was like soliciting feedback. And so you go ahead to somebody and you say specifically, okay, what can you tell me that I need to improve? And people will always, the first thing they say is, you're doing great. And you say, thank you, but I really want to improve. I really want to get better at blah, blah, blah. So what things do you think I could do that would help me get better at blah, blah, blah? And it's really like pulling teeth to try to get people to do this. And on the other hand, so that was the first one. Oh yeah, it's really tough to solicit feedback that's negative. And then they were like, okay, now I want you to go through this thing where you're gonna try to give negative feedback. And I was like, no, thank you. Because nobody likes to do that, right? So what the training said you need to do is you need to start from a place where everyone agrees. And so all of your words, when you are describing something that you're gonna give negative feedback on, when you're describing what the person that you're giving feedback on was doing, they should all be nouns and verbs. You're not editorializing. You're not, there's no feelings in there. There's no descriptions. It's just like, we were at a meeting together. And they're like, yes, we were. And then you can say, it hurt my feelings when, or all these I statements that are very descriptive and have lots of personal impressions. And that's how you can give negative feedback, because your feedback is always about you. Their perspective is their perspective. Like you can't get in their head and think what they were thinking. So when you're giving feedback, you shouldn't be trying to do that. You should just be giving them nouns and verbs. We were at a meeting together. And then it really hurt my feelings when you talked over me at that meeting, or it was really difficult to concentrate on my performance during that meeting because I saw you on your phone scrolling and things like that. That's how you would give negative feedback. So why does positive and negative feedback connect back to how we should communicate with each other? As I said, language is all about buying in, and all language is trying to communicate and trying to make sure that you can perspective taking. So if we're doing feedback and it's about us, we still are trying to think about, like when you're trying to give very delicate feedback, you're still thinking about how what you are saying might be affecting that person. And you're still giving the person space to say what they were thinking about. But guess what else? It's not a debate. It's not a debate. That's a conversation. That's more like what Socrates was talking about with Socratic debates. You're opening your brains and you're trying to think about somebody else and they're thinking about you, making space in your brains for each other instead of I win and you don't win, or nobody won that one, we just talked over each other. So how does that apply to today? I find myself thinking about this when I am tempted to turn off the radio or turn away from a news story. I think to myself, what is it about this program or this story or this show that I'm listening to right now that is challenging me? What kind of feedback am I getting from this story? Is it bringing me a perspective that I need to hear that I don't want to hear? So, sorry. Armstrong brings up Gandhi and Jesus, saying that you can be compassionate without, sorry, I skipped a little bit. You saw me going back and forth, I skipped a little bit. Okay. So back to feedback. We're taking perspectives. And if you're always out there taking someone else's perspective and they're never out there taking your perspective, it can feel pretty futile. Like, I can be as compassionate as I want to this person, but they are never going to come back and hear me. They're not making space in their brain for me. So what's the point? Why should I try and engage in a dialogue if they're still debating? And the reason she says is she brings up Gandhi and Jesus. She says that there's something called compassionate assertiveness. Compassionate assertiveness requires that we make an effort to understand the context in which others are creating their ideas, even when we disagree with the way they are expressing those ideas. Turning the cheek or excusing nonviolence doesn't mean that we agree with what they are saying. As Gandhi said, you may have my dead body, but you will not have my compliance. But having that kind of perspective taken and taking a stand where you are, what that does is that helps somebody to respect your point of view. Because they're not out there. If somebody, have you ever done this thing? I don't know if how many of you have dealt with very small children who get very stubborn about something. So they're out there and they're like, I am never taking a shower, never. I don't like showers, I'm never taking a shower. And you know, at first, my one daughter, I'd be like, no, you have to take it. And so after a while, I would just be like, okay, right, I can hear that you do not want this shower. I can hear that. Yeah, I totally, I do agree that it is very difficult to take off all of your clothes to get in the shower. You know, it sometimes does feel much better to just leave those shoes on, but I don't think that it's gonna help the shower, like the reason behind showering if you don't take your shoes off. But instead of fighting, instead of debating whether or not showers were necessary, I started listening to their concerns. And you know what? After a while of arguing like with herself, my child decided to take a shower. Because I was no longer, I was taking perspective, but I was no longer trying to win the debate. And when you're punching really hard against somebody who's like just kind of ignoring your punches, you kind of stop. So sometimes even when I know why I'm finding that I'm reactive against an idea, I do still find something else to read or watch or listen to. I'm not a masochist. But when I do have the bandwidth, I think about this hymn in our teal hymnal, when our heart is in a holy place. It says, when our heart is in a holy place, and we're filled with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. And when you think about that, you can think about all of those people in the past who had that same feeling. Like, that sounds like Buddha being in nirvana. That sounds like Jesus praying. That sounds like just being in your body and being one with the universe. But the next thing it says is listen with a loving mind. And if you can connect and listen to someone with a loving mind, how much better does the world become? It reminds me of what he was saying in the Father's Day reading, where he said, how do we work together to make the world that should have been when we were born? How do we work together to make that world that our children deserve? And I really believe that one of the things that we can do is we can listen with a loving mind, and we can take perspective, and we can keep dodging those swings until the people who are trying to debate us actually start having a dialogue instead. And that's my hope for the world. So may it be. So please join in singing number 299 in the great hymnal, Make Channels for the Streams of Love. now is the time where we get to share our joy. I was just thinking about activist judges. I'm like, I'm not an activist judge, but I'm an activist speaker. We can all be activist speakers. All right, so please join me in reading our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish the shroud flame, but not the light of wisdom, but warm the community for the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again. And we'll close today with these words by Sam Trumbo. Go forth in simplicity. Find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness and peace and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate and hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people. Amen. Shalom, salam, blessed be, and thank you so much for being here.